Anyway, that was Democrat presidential nominee Kamala Harris blasting former President Trump while offering few solutions to the economic and immigration crises in her acceptance speech on Thursday. For more reaction, we welcome in Missouri Republican Senator and surrogate for the Trump campaign, Senator Eric Schmitt. Senator, good to see you again. It kind of ended up sort of being like a Seinfeld episode. Seemed to me to be sort of a convention about nothing, except attacking Donald Trump some 270 times. What stood out most to you?
So much joy, Tom. There was just so much joy in that. It was unbelievable. And to paraphrase Marie Antoinette, I think the response to people who are hurting in this country was, let them eat joy. I mean, it was really carefully scripted, all about Donald Trump. And here's one thing that we know, that they know, and, they didn't want to admit, which is they can't run on anything. She's the incumbent here. Her administration has destroyed jobs, made energy more expensive, made everything more expensive. The border's wide open. She was the border czar. So there's no talk about that. There's no talk of solutions. And this comes on top of really a coup for her to get there. She never received a primary vote. And I think once she's further exposed, sort of like the backup quarterback, there's a lot of talk about the backup quarterback till the backup quarterback actually has to get on the field. And then you reason why, you understand why the backup quarterback was the backup quarterback. So I think we're entering that phase of the campaign now, which is hopefully she's going to have to answer some real questions. And this is a clearly weak spot for her. They know it. So they had this production going on for the week, but it won't distract from the real issues. And I think that's what this campaign is going to be all about.
I mean, you have to hand it to him. It was very well produced. It looked really good on TV, but she really didn't say very much of anything. Yesterday, however, somebody did say something. Robert F. Kennedy gave a clear and aggressive takedown of the Democratic Party as he endorsed President Trump. Here's what he said led him to that decision. Watch.
It ran a sham primary that was rigged to prevent any serious challenge to President Biden. Then, when a predictably bungled debate performance precipitated the palace coup against President Biden, the same shadowy DNC operatives appointed his successor, also without an election.
Senator, how does this endorsement impact the political landscape now leading up to November, do you think?
So I think it's way more significant than, of course, the mainstream media is giving credit, for the endorsement, because there's a couple things going on here. One is the Kennedy name is iconic in the Democrat Party, right? It's iconic. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. also attracts a lot of support from independent-minded folks. If you look at any poll, he was polling, 5-8% in many places that he was on the ballot. So his endorsement, in places like Pennsylvania and Michigan and Wisconsin, where there are disaffected voters who are frustrated, who, by the way, I think he speaks uniquely to some of the folks during COVID who saw the abuses of the Democrat Party, right? They saw the tyranny that existed, the COVID tyranny. So Robert F. Kennedy Jr., I think for people who are looking for a home in him as sort of a dissident, as a voice of dissent, now they move squarely into the Donald Trump column. That small group, and it doesn't need to be a bunch of people. Like these elections in those swing states are going to come down to 1 or 2 percentage points. Yeah. So I think it's significant. But look, you're going to see the mainstream media discount this, but I think it's way more significant than people think.
And of course, former President Trump has also embraced RFK's call to do something in this country about chronic illness, something that we talked about on this program a couple of months ago. I want to go back to the DNC, Senator. No DNC would be complete without the Obamas, I guess because they're kind of the head of the party, actually. Michelle Obama had an interesting line here. Watch this.
My mom, in her steady, quiet way, lived out that striving sense of hope every single day of her life. She and my father didn't aspire to be wealthy. In fact, they were suspicious of folks who took more than they needed.
Took more than they needed. Of course, the Obamas have 3 homes and are worth close to $100 million. Here's the former president who followed her.
If a parent or grandparent occasionally says something that makes us cringe, we don't automatically assume they're bad people. We recognize that the world is moving fast, that they need time and maybe a little encouragement to catch up.
These, to me, seemed like very significant signals about a very different economic vision and concept of freedom from many people in this country. Your reaction to what they telegraphed there?
Well, a couple things. First of all, the house, the beach home they have on Martha's Vineyard, you also know they're not very concerned about so-called, the climate, because they're right on the coast. So there's so much hypocrisy in these statements from the Obamas. I think, to me, it was a reminder of how divisive the Obamas really are. If you want to understand where our politics really took a detour, it's the Obama years, promising hope and joy, ironically, right? These sorts of code words to come in and utilize and weaponize identity politics. So critical race theory, all of these sorts of things that divide the room by race. This originated with the Obamas and their strategy. And so here we are now, and I think that they have crossed the Rubicon, the Democrats have. We're not having discussions like Tip O'Neill and Ronald Reagan about marginal tax rates. This is about total power and control. Mm-hmm. They have said, Tom, that they will add states to the Union and pack the Supreme Court if they ever have the trifecta of the majority. So this is a very different world we're living in, and why this election cycle is so important. They cannot be successful. They've weaponized the Justice Department. They have, made life harder for working families. They have to pay a price at the, in November. And I think that Trump's going to win because he's offering a vision. He's offering hope. He's offering, and they try to put him in a box, but we saw what he did. And we had, again, secure border, energy dominance, and peace and prosperity.